The Welcome Banquet and First Impressions. Bruce's first day at the prestigious Terran University, he attended the much-anticipated welcome banquet, where a grand feast of synthetically grown plants was laid out before the students. The Terrans, being strict herbivores, took great pride in their plant-based diet, considering it the epitome of civilization. The banquet hall was an architectural marvel, with its towering ceilings and intricate designs reflecting the Terran culture's deep connection with nature. However, amidst the grandeur, Bruce's stomach grumbled loudly, a stark reminder that he had not eaten since his arrival. The thought of surviving on this limited diet for 2 years weighed heavily on Bruce's mind. His Terran roommate, Orion, a tall, slender figure with shimmering scales and delicate antennae, noticed Bruce's discomfort and questioned him about human dietary habits. "Is everything all right, Bruce?" Orion asked, his voice tinged with concern. Bruce hesitated, unsure of how to explain his predicament without offending his new friends. After a moment, he decided to be honest. "Back on Earth, we humans consume a wide variety of foods, including meat. It's a key part of our diet and was crucial to our ancestors' survival and brain development." Orion's eyes widened in surprise, his antennae twitching in curiosity. Before he could respond, the Terran administrator, a stern figure with a long robe adorned with symbols of peace and unity, stood at the head of the table. His voice, calm yet authoritative, filled the hall as he welcomed the human exchange students. "We are honored to have you here, representatives of Earth. This exchange is an opportunity for us to learn from one another and to civilize humanity by introducing you to our superior, herbivorous lifestyle." His words were polite, but Bruce couldn't help but detect a thinly veiled condescension. As the evening progressed, Bruce felt increasingly alienated. The other human students seemed to be adjusting well, but Bruce struggled to find anything on his plate that appealed to him. The bland, synthetic plants did little to satisfy his hunger. It was then that he met Lyra, a Terran female student with sapphire blue eyes that sparkled with curiosity. She approached Bruce with a warm smile, her melodic voice cutting through the awkwardness. "You're Bruce, right? The human student?" Bruce nodded, surprised by her friendliness. "That's me. It's nice to meet you, Lyra." Lyra's slender antennae twitched with excitement as she continued, "I'm fascinated by human culture and history. Would you be interested in joining the Xenolinguistics Club? We have students from various alien races who come together to learn about each other's languages and customs." Bruce's eyes widened with interest. This was the first time someone had shown genuine interest in his culture. "That sounds amazing. I'd love to join." Exploring Terran society and new friendships, as Bruce spent more time with his new friends, he began to learn more about Terran society and the complex political tensions surrounding the human-Terran peace process. The university was a microcosm of the larger world, where different ideologies clashed and coexisted in a delicate balance. Lyra, who had become one of Bruce's closest friends, confided in him one evening as they walked through the university gardens. The gardens were a tranquil oasis, filled with exotic plants that glowed softly in the twilight. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, creating an almost surreal atmosphere. "There's a growing movement of Terran traditionalists who oppose any interaction with primitive species like humans," Lyra explained, her voice tinged with worry. "They believe it will taint our superior culture and lead to our downfall." Bruce frowned, his brow furrowing with concern. "That's troubling. I had no idea the opposition was so strong." Lyra nodded, her antennae drooping slightly. "It's not something we talk about openly, but it's there, simmering beneath the surface." Meanwhile, Orion's curiosity about human dietary habits grew. Despite his initial revulsion, he began to secretly join Bruce in his dorm room for meals. At first, he was disgusted by the sight and smell of cooked meat, his delicate senses overwhelmed by the unfamiliar aromas. However, as he listened to Bruce explain the evolutionary and cultural significance of an omnivorous diet, Orion's disgust gradually gave way to open-mindedness. "I never realized how much food is tied to your history and identity," Orion mused one evening as he tentatively took a bite of a synthetic meat substitute Bruce had prepared. "It's not just about survival, It's about who you are as a species. As the semester progressed, Bruce's Xenolinguistics Club decided to plan a field trip to a nearby wilderness preserve to study the native flora and fauna. The preserve was a vast expanse of untamed wilderness, home to countless alien species that had evolved in isolation for millennia. Bruce, Orion, Lyra, and two other students, Zach and Mira, eagerly signed up for the trip, excited for an adventure outside the confines of the university. They gathered at the preserve entrance on a misty morning, their packs loaded with supplies and research equipment. The air was cool and crisp, with a faint hint of rain in the distance. Lyra handed out data pads with information about the preserve's ecosystem, while Zach cracked jokes to ease any nerves. Mira, a quiet but observant Zorian student, fiddled with her translation device, ensuring it was properly calibrated for the various alien languages spoken within the group. Unbeknownst to the students, a group of Terran traditionalist extremists had gotten wind of the field trip plans. They saw it as an opportunity to sabotage the human-Terran peace process by ensuring that the trip ended in disaster and the human students were blamed. As the students set off down the trail, chatting and laughing, they were blissfully unaware of the danger that awaited them in the alien wilderness. The dangerous wilderness expedition. The dense foliage of the wilderness preserve seemed to swallow the students whole as they ventured deeper into the unknown. Towering trees with vibrant, multicolored leaves stretched high above them, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Strange bird calls echoed through the misty air, and unfamiliar scents wafted on the breeze. Bruce marveled at the alien landscape, so different from the forests of Earth. The path they followed was narrow and winding, barely visible beneath the thick undergrowth. As they trekked onward, the students took samples and recorded their observations, marveling at the diversity of the alien ecosystem. Mira used her tentacles to gently collect delicate plant specimens, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. Zach, with his enhanced Zorian senses, tracked the movements of small, scurrying creatures in the underbrush, occasionally pointing out interesting findings to the group. Suddenly, a sharp crack rang out through the forest, followed by a pained yelp. The students froze, their hearts pounding with fear. Bruce scanned the surrounding trees, his eyes narrowing as he searched for the source of the sound. "Did anyone else hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The others nodded, their expressions tense. A rustling in the bushes drew their attention, and a group of Terran traditionalists emerged, their faces twisted with hatred and disgust. They brandished crude weapons, advancing on the students with menacing intent. Bruce's mind raced as he tried to find a way to defuse the situation. "We mean no harm," he called out, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We're just here to study the ecosystem." But the traditionalists were not interested in dialogue. "You've corrupted our people with your savage ways," one of them snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "We're here to put an end to this madness." Before Bruce could react, the traditionalists lunged at them, forcing the students to scatter. They darted between trees and leaped over fallen logs, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. Bruce led his friends deeper into the alien wilderness, his heart pounding in his chest as he tried to think of a plan. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, doing a quick head count. Orion nodded, his antennae twitching. "Yes, but where are we? And what was that creature?" Before anyone could respond, a stern voice cut through the air. That, young Orion, was a Groth, a species thought to be extinct for centuries. The students turned to see Professor Thoraxis, one of their instructors, emerging from behind a large, twisted tree. His typically immaculate robes were now torn and stained with alien mud. "Professor?" Lyra exclaimed, her voice filled with surprise. "What are you doing here?" Thoraxis straightened his posture, attempting to maintain his air of authority despite his disheveled appearance. "I arrived early to prepare the campsite, but it seems our field trip has taken an unexpected turn. We need to find a way to contact the authorities," he said, his voice low. "But first, we must secure food and shelter." Bruce nodded, his survivalist instincts kicking in. "I can help with that. Orion, come with me. We'll scout the area and see what we can find." As they ventured into the purple-leafed forest, Bruce began pointing out various plants and creatures that could potentially be used for food. "See that root system? It looks similar to a tuber we have on Earth. And those flying insects? They might be a good source of protein. Orion watched with a mix of fascination and unease as Bruce deftly caught one of the buzzing creatures. "I've never seen anyone hunt like that before," he admitted, his voice tinged with awe. As they returned to camp with their foraged supplies, they found the others engaged in animated conversation. Zack was regaling the group with tales of Zorian mating rituals, his gestures becoming increasingly elaborate as he described the complex dances involved. Suddenly, a guttural howl pierced the night, causing everyone to fall silent. The sound of heavy footsteps followed, growing louder with each passing moment. Bruce's mind raced, searching for a way to keep everyone safe. "We need to find shelter," he whispered urgently, motioning for the others to follow him. As they moved away from the camp, the beam of their flashlights fell upon a set of massive three-toed tracks pressed into the soft earth. Bruce knelt to examine them, his brow furrowing in concern. "Whatever made these tracks is big. Really big," he murmured. Before they could investigate further, a rustling in the nearby bushes caught their attention. Bruce's hand tightened around his flashlight, ready to use it as a makeshift weapon if necessary. The tension in the air was palpable as the students waited, their breaths held in anxious anticipation. A fight for survival in the dim light of the alien wilderness, the students' fear was almost tangible. They had ventured into this alien world with the intention of studying it, but now it seemed the world was studying them. Bruce let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "We should head back and warn the others. Whatever made those tracks could still be out there," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. As they made their way back to camp, neither of them noticed the pair of eyes watching them from the shadows, nor did they hear the soft click of a communication device as a message was sent into the depths of the alien wilderness. Back at the camp, the gravity of their situation became clear. Their supplies were dwindling, and the alien wilderness stretched endlessly in every direction. Bruce took a deep breath, his mind racing with survival strategies. "All right, everyone," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "We need to work together if we're going to make it out of here. Let's split into teams. Orion, you're with me. Zack, you and Lyra stay here and fortify the camp. Mira, you take the lead on finding a safe water source." As the others set off, Bruce turned to Orion. "I'm going to teach you how to hunt," he said, his voice serious. Orion's antennae twitched nervously. "Hunt? But we Terrans don't—" "I know," Bruce interrupted gently, "but right now we don't have a choice." Their first attempts were clumsy and fruitless. Orion's normally graceful movements seemed awkward as he wielded the makeshift spear, and the alien creatures they hunted were quick and elusive. But as the hours passed, Orion began to mimic Bruce's quiet, purposeful movements. His natural agility and heightened senses started to come into play, and before long they had caught their first meal. The creature let out a high-pitched squeal as the spear found its mark. Orion flinched at the sound, his face a mix of horror and fascination. "I never thought I would do something like this," he muttered, more to himself than to Bruce. But there was no time to dwell on it. They had food, and that was what mattered. Back at the camp, the alien students recoiled at first, their faces contorting at the unfamiliar smell of cooking meat. But as the aroma filled the air, their expressions changed from disgust to curiosity. Zack was the first to cave. "Well, I suppose if we're going to die out here anyway, I might as well try it," he quipped, reaching for a piece of the roasted flesh. His eyes widened as he chewed. "By the moons of Zorax, that's actually quite good." Orion watched as the others began to eat, his own thoughts racing. "You know," he said between bites, "I've been thinking about those ancient texts I mentioned. What if our ancestors were more like humans than we realized? What if we've just forgotten our own history?" Bruce nodded, considering Orion's words. "It's possible. Maybe there's more to our connection than we thought." As they packed up camp and ventured deeper into the alien wilderness, Bruce felt a newfound sense of purpose. He may have been stranded on an alien world, but he was no longer alone. Together, they just might survive this ordeal and perhaps bridge the gap between their species in ways no one had ever imagined. But as they continued their journey, the dangers of the wilderness became more apparent. The purple-leafed canopy above them filtered the sunlight, casting an otherworldly glow on their makeshift camp. "We need to establish a more permanent shelter," Bruce announced, surveying the clearing they'd found. "This looks like a good spot." The struggle for coexistence weeks passed, and their camp grew more sophisticated. Mira's tentacles proved adept at identifying edible vegetation, her initial timidity replaced by a quiet confidence. Lyra used her knowledge of Terran agriculture to cultivate small plots of alien crops, creating a sustainable source of food for the group. One evening, as they gathered around the fire, Bruce regaled them with tales of human coming-of-age rituals on Earth. "Some cultures still practice vision quests or wilderness survival tests," he explained, the firelight flickering across his face. The others listened intently, their expressions a mix of fascination and disbelief. But their newfound sense of camaraderie was soon put to the test. A loud crash echoed through the forest, followed by the sound of approaching footsteps. The students tensed, their hearts racing with fear. Bruce slowly stood, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm," he called out, hoping to defuse the situation. But the figures that emerged from the trees were not friendly. Zark, a known leader of the Terran traditionalist movement, stood at the head of a group of armed extremists. His face was contorted with rage as he pointed at the students. "They've been corrupted by human influence," he spat. "Look at them, consuming flesh like savages." To everyone's surprise, it was Mira who spoke up, her tentacles rippling with indignation. "We chose to eat meat to survive," she said, her voice steady and firm. "Bruce taught us how to live off the land, something our own people have forgotten." The other alien students nodded in agreement, forming a protective circle around Bruce. Zark's face twisted with fury as he realized that his words had no effect on the group. "You're all traitors!" he bellowed, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, a loud roar echoed through the forest. The ground shook as a massive creature emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The students scattered, darting between trees as the creature charged at Zark and his men. In the chaos, Bruce grabbed Orion's arm, pulling him toward a nearby cave. "This way!" he shouted. They tumbled into the cave, gasping for breath as they tried to process what had just happened. "What was that thing?" Orion asked, his voice trembling with fear. "I don't know," Bruce replied, "but we need to find a way out of here, fast." As they ventured deeper into the cave, the sounds of the forest faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The walls were lined with strange, glowing crystals that cast a soft light on their path. "This must be some kind of ancient Terran sanctuary," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. But their discovery was short-lived. The cave began to tremble and chunks of rock started to fall from the ceiling. "We need to get out of here," Bruce shouted, grabbing Lyra's hand as they sprinted toward the exit. They burst out of the cave just as it collapsed behind them, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. The creature was gone, and Zark's men were nowhere to be seen. The students stood in stunned silence, their minds reeling from the events of the past few hours. The cost of peace. The journey back to civilization was tense and silent. As they approached the outskirts of the city, they could hear the distant roar of angry crowds. The Terran military tightened their formation around the students, their expressions grim. The gates of the university loomed before them, a mix of protesters and supporters clashing outside. Signs declaring humans go home competed with others proclaiming interspecies unity now. Chancellor Corbin met them at the entrance, his face grave. "Welcome back," he said, ushering them inside. "I'm afraid your adventure has sparked quite the controversy. For now, you'll need to remain in campus housing for your own safety." The university campus buzzed with tension as Bruce and his alien companions were escorted to their temporary quarters. Security personnel flanked them, their eyes scanning the crowd for potential threats. "Stay close," Bruce muttered to the others. "We're in this together." As they entered the dormitory, a group of students rushed forward, their faces a mix of awe and disgust. "Is it true?" one of them asked, eyes wide. "Did you really eat meat?" Before Bruce could respond, Chancellor Corbin stepped between them. "That's quite enough. These students need rest. There will be time for questions later." He turned to Bruce, his expression softening. "You've been through a lot, Bruce. I can't imagine how difficult this must be for you." Bruce nodded, grateful for the Chancellor's understanding. But he couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse. As the days wore on, the tension on campus only grew. Protests erupted outside the dining halls, with students lining up to try the new meat options, while others staged demonstrations with signs proclaiming, "Meat is murder." Bruce stood at the entrance of the main cafeteria, the aroma of grilled steaks wafting through the air. A group of Terran students approached, their faces a mix of curiosity and revulsion. "Is it true?" one of them asked, clicking nervously. "That's real animal flesh?" Bruce nodded, picking up a plate. "It is, and I invite you all to try it." The students hesitated, their antennae twitching nervously. But one by one, they began to take small portions, their expressions changing from disgust to surprise to grudging enjoyment. But not everyone was won over so easily. Reports of unrest in the outlying colonies reached the university, and Chancellor Corbin called Bruce to his office, his face grave. "We need to take our message beyond these walls," he said. "I'm authorizing the formation of an integration corps. You'll travel to the most resistant settlements, starting with the agricultural colony on Taria Prime." Bruce nodded, his mind already racing with plans. "I'll need a team," he said, his voice filled with determination. A new beginning Bruce assembled his core group, Orion for his strategic mind, Lyra for her persuasive speaking, Zack for his adaptability, and Mira for her analytical skills. Together, they boarded a sleek diplomatic shuttle, its hull emblazoned with the new insignia of the Integration Corps. As they approached Taria Prime, the comm system crackled to life, a stern voice filling the cabin. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted airspace. Turn back immediately or face consequences." Bruce exchanged glances with his team, Orion's antennae twitching nervously, Lyra's blue eyes narrowed in determination. "This is Ambassador Bruce Coleman of the Human-Terran Integration Corps," Bruce responded. "We come in peace and request permission to land." The shuttle touched down on a dusty landing pad surrounded by a sea of angry faces. Protesters brandished signs with slogans like, "Humans go home and protect our traditions." As Bruce and his team descended the ramp, a rotten fruit splattered at their feet, the crowd's chanting growing louder. "Meat is murder! Meat is murder!" Governor Rash towered over the crowd, his carapace gleaming in the harsh sunlight. "Ambassador Coleman," he rumbled, mandibles clicking with barely concealed contempt. "Welcome to Raker 5. Bruce nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "Thank you, Governor. I understand there's been some resistance to the new dietary options." Rash's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Resistance is an understatement. Our people are on the brink of revolt. They see your presence here as an affront to our culture." "I understand your concerns," Bruce replied calmly. "But I believe that with time and understanding, we can find common ground." Rash snorted, his antennae quivering. "I doubt it. But you're welcome to try." He turned on his heel and stalked away, leaving Bruce and his team to face the hostile crowd. That evening, the Integration Corps set up their portable kitchen in the governor's banquet hall. Bruce donned an apron and got to work, the sizzle of meat on the grill filling the air. Rash's inner circle filed in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disgust. The governor himself sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. Bruce served the first dish, a beautifully seared steak marinated in herbs and spices. As the aroma intensified, Bruce noticed subtle changes in the Terran officials. Mandibles quivered, compound eyes dilated, and when Rash turned to berate a servant, several advisors quickly snatched bites of the forbidden food. "Tastes good, doesn't it?" Bruce commented casually as he caught one of them sneaking another bite. The advisor froze, caught red-handed, but then slowly nodded in agreement. The following days saw a shift in the colony. Word spread rapidly through Raker 5 about the humans' cooking, and more Terran officials began to visit the Integration Corps' kitchen, discreetly sampling the new dishes. But tensions remained high, and reports of violent clashes between traditionalists and those curious about omnivorous diets continued to filter in. One evening, as Bruce prepared a small feast for a group of local officials, a knock came at the door. Bruce opened it to find a young female Terran, her mandibles clicking anxiously. "What you're doing here, it's changing things," she whispered. "People are questioning centuries of tradition." It's tearing families apart. Bruce nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. It's not easy, I know, but sometimes change is necessary for progress. She met his gaze, her compound eyes reflecting a mix of fear and determination. I want to help, she said. I want to learn. Over the next few days, Bruce taught her the basics of meat preparation, and she proved to be an eager student. Her initial revulsion gave way to fascination as she learned the intricacies of flavor and texture. The morning of the feast, she burst into the Corps' makeshift headquarters, breathless with excitement. My father's decrees have left many on the brink of starvation. They're desperate, Ambassador. They need your help. Bruce's eyes widened. This was more than he had dared hope for, but it also raised the stakes exponentially. If they were caught now, the consequences could be dire. But as they worked together, Bruce couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching a tipping point. For better or worse, Raker 5 would never be the same after today.